Testing, testing. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. We are talking here about PC 75 energy storage capacity, and we're going to start off with John Burkowski. So take it away, John.
Okay, good morning, Commissioners. John Borkowski for the PC75, what we're calling the NGEA TX, or Next Generation Energy Pack Transmission Connected Obligations Work Group. Now, I led several work group meetings with interested stakeholders and attempted to reach consensus on matters involving the establishment of NGEA, Transmission Connected Energy Storage escrow accounts, and the standard obligations that a successful applicant would undertake upon receiving an ESCC, or Energy Storage Capacity Credit Award, from the Commission. Now, our work group prioritized its efforts into two separate work streams, mostly driven by the fact that these work streams were due at different dates. The first work stream that will be fully discussed today is a Maryland standardized agreement for approval of ESCCs, which I'll be referring to as agreement. And this is a proposal for your consideration. And this first work stream is a high priority since ideally the agreement needs to be finalized before October 1st, 2026, when the Commission is required by the NGEA to issue an order selecting or denying proposals for transmission energy storage device projects, and that's associated with case 9866. The second work stream is related to the establishment of an escrow account for the purpose of coordinating between the electric companies and electric suppliers ESCC purchases and non-bypassable distribution charges that shall be applied to all electric customers per the NGEA. This escrow account does not have to be in place until October 1st, 2028, which is the required commercial operation date of the selected transmission energy storage device projects that will be selected in round one, unless they are extended, those CODs are extended for good cause. Now, regarding the establishment of this escrow account, and we'll get into this a little bit later, many stakeholders argue for a change in law in the 2027 session of the General Assembly to assign non-bypassable distribution charges to electric companies instead of electric suppliers. And this was how it worked in offshore wind. The way the statute is currently written makes the establishment of an escrow account extremely difficult, with resultant impacts on the complexity and cost. And that would also complicate our developing and soliciting RFP bids for an escrow account administrator, notwithstanding the complexity of managing the transactions themselves in the escrow account. So although we have 2 years, we need to start working on it now, so we will be hearing some discussion today in an attempt to get future direction from the Commission. So back to the agreement itself, though, this proposed agreement did not start from a blank sheet. We used a number of different sources, including requests for applications, the Maryland offshore wind orders and regulations, and then we use various energy storage agreements in other states. I mean, energy storage is very unique and has unique risk, which have to be eventually translated into agreement terms and conditions. The agreement terms and conditions that are enclosed in the proposed agreement include conditions or terms and conditions which energy storage developers maintain are necessary for them to achieve financing and subsequent commercial operation. Now, while there are many terms in the proposed agreement that were unopposed, and presumably consensus terms since they were unopposed in the formal comments issued by stakeholders, there are several major areas of disagreement, mostly involving terms regarding who takes various risks, projects or ratepayers. And several stakeholders desire that energy storage project developers take all the risk, but this creates an illusion of risk transfer. This illusion of risk transfer occurs because these parties believe that they are saving ratepayers money by transferring all the risk to project developers, but in the end, ratepayers could potentially pay more through inflated ESCC pricing due to the added risk premium that developers will require to accept those risks. Or even it could possibly cause prospective developers to walk away from Maryland's program, which would detract from the success of the Commission's solicitation. So I'm not going to cover these risks now. They'll be covered as we go through the sections. And what I think the plan for today is to go through each section and offer stakeholders a opportunity to comment as we go through each section. So,
All right. So, Chair, the game plan is at each section, Mr. Borkowski or I will summarize the general areas of disagreement within the section, or areas, maybe it's not disagreement, but there was a footnote that listed a possible item that needed to be discussed. We'll let the relevant parties go in about 2 minutes, unless it's a really big issue, in which case defer to you on how much time you think they should have. Probably 5 or 10 to discuss the topics, and then open it up for questions.
Right. Okay, that sounds good.
Sounds good. So definitions, there was no issues, though there might be items to come back for, depending on what changes. Section 2 is the acceptance of the award. The first item in there has to do with the bond, which was an item between OPC staff and the storage parties. I don't know if Mr. Borkowski, you want to comment, or we just invite them up?
I think we can invite them up.
All right, OPC.
All right, People's Council. I thought I saw somebody here from.
Yeah.
Oh.
He's there. But I was just not sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course.
Good morning. Mike Freeman for the OPC consultant. The question was surety bond versus letter of credit or equivalent security. And I argued for letter of credit or equivalent security, meaning cash, because my experience with surety bonds has been that in commercial transactions has been that they're difficult to draw down. There's more, in my experience, more red tape between a drawdown request and the actual money associated with the request coming through. Whereas with letters of credit, my experience has been that the drawdown is much more, much quicker and with far less red tape. So that was the basis for my recommendation.
Okay. Is there anybody else who'd like to comment before I open it up to questions from the bench? Please. Yeah, sure. And feel free to use, in the future, feel free to use the chairs in the front if you wish.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Colin Schofield with Chalk Point Reliability.
Yeah, turn him
Yeah.
Testing.
Pull it closer, I think.
Sorry. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Colin Schofield with Chalk Point Reliability Storage. Good morning, everybody.
Make sure you spell your name so our court reporter can get that.
It's Colin. Last name is Schofield, Schofield. And on behalf of Chalk Point, just wanted to note that we have provided in the past both letters of credit and surety bonds, as well as cash equivalents. We would prefer in this instance for round one to maintain a surety bond, because that was what was described in the RFA and what we had priced to. Surety bonds, there are draw conditions. We'd be happy to provide a form surety bond for you to look at. Mainly, it includes a larger pool of potential providers, so folks like insurance companies with equivalent ratings. That includes more parties that are capable of issuing it than just top-rated banks. That allows the cost to be cheaper. So we're happy to provide either instrument, but making sure that we can price it in as we're going through the pricing process at the RFA stage is important. And then also wanted to respond to the amounts cited in the footnote. Don't disagree with the 75,000 to 100,000 per megawatt in general energy market transactions, but for energy storage specifically, we don't see the 25,000 per megawatt surety bond amount in the round one RFA as unreasonable or out of market. There's several examples of recent energy storage solicitations from other states, including New York, the NYSERDA solicitation in 2025, which starts at 20,000 and goes up to 30,000. In Illinois, the ongoing CGRA energy storage solicitation is 20,000 per megawatt. And in Massachusetts, the 2025 solicitation is 40,000 per megawatt. So this amount we see as in line with energy storage transactions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment before I entertain questions from the bench? Okay, seeing none. Questions? Commissioner Suchman.
Mr. Freeman, so you just heard from Chalk Point that having the option allows them to present a proposal that can be less costly for the ratepayer. Do you agree that having some flexibility and in either a letter of credit or a surety bond could help to bring those costs down when the proposal is offered?
I think so, and I think I'm okay with the option.
Okay.
But I do think, and Mr. Schofield mentioned this, if we could see the drawdown process and requirements for surety bonds from whatever institution is chosen, and it ought to be something that we're in agreement with, then I think we're okay with the surety bond.
Okay. So would you want that to be a requirement in the regulation? I mean, how would you ensure that you're comfortable with the drawdown provisions?
I think we'd need to get a template of this document that describes the process and the requirements, and then try to get some of that language into the regulations in broad form.
Okay. And Mr. Schofield, since you had, Mr. Chair, is it okay for me?
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean,
So-
the way I want to do this is have all the people who want to opine to do so, and then have us question them all.
Okay, that's great.
Simultaneously.
So it looks like it looks like there is some agreement on an option. And what I think OPC is asking for is just some greater clarity on the drawdown provisions. Are you comfortable with that?
We'd be comfortable with that, and
Okay.
including some of those draw conditions as an appendix.
Okay.
To conditions with some substantially in the form of language, just to make sure that we can conform it to the actual issuer.
Okay. And Mr. Bukowski, does this make sense from a Comar perspective to have some sort of additional language in here?
Yes, thanks for the question, because it gives me an opportunity to clarify. The NGEA transmission connected storage consists of only 2 solicitations. So typically, we don't promulgate regulations for just a temporary program. So all the quote-unquote regulations are really codified in the agreement.
Okay.
Now, should the General Assembly want us to do more, and I do think that these terms and conditions could be, in some cases, transferable to other types of procurements, then we, might have to entertain a Comar rulemaking.
Okay. But if we focus just on the agreement, does it make sense to have some additional language
Yeah.
that makes clear about the drawdown requirement?
Yeah, and we did, and I have to admit, I really should have had this in the original agreement, because we talked about it in our request for applications that, again, we were only looking at surety bonds, but we had drawdown requirements in there for not meeting commercial operation date. So I'm not sure, I understand what a template and things like that are, but, if OPC and I guess Chalk Point seem to think it's feasible, then we can put something else. in
Okay.
that.
Would they be, if they can come up with some language that's mutually agreeable? Okay, so you guys have a couple hours to work that out. All right.
More than a couple.
Or
Yeah,
more than a couple hours. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioner
Mr. Freeman, don't go away, sir.
McLean?
Sir, I was curious about your 75,000 to 100,000 megawatt price point versus Chalk Point's 20 to 30,000.
I don't see a distinction with storage transactions versus any other offtake agreement. Now, it was pointed out that Illinois, Massachusetts, New York are requiring lesser amounts of pre-FNTP security, FNTP full notice to proceed. So the problem here, as I see it, the security before construction begins has to be high enough such that the developer doesn't forfeit the amount in order to shop the project to a higher value bid out in the market. And we've seen this happen over and over again, especially with solar projects. And it's happened to me personally 4 times, where despite the 75 to 100,000 megawatt pre-FNTP security, developers, not in PJM, but in other jurisdictions around the country, have defaulted even at the execution of PPA stage and shop the project around to find higher value. And that's a terrible result and not something I'd want to see happen here at all, ever. So the balance is trying to get enough security into the agreement such that the developer sticks with the plan and doesn't try to shop the project and walk away from you, even while forfeiting the money, and coming up with an amount that the development community can live with. Because the higher the security amount, the higher the cost to put up the collateral. So that was my reasoning.
Okay. Are you aware of any other jurisdictions that have used similar amounts to what you're recommending, sir?
Not in regulated proceedings like this.
Okay.
Only in commercial transactions, not under the authority of the commissions.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? All right, I think we're done with this then. Thank you.
Wonderful. All right, Section 3, that's all the notes I have for Section 2 in terms of concerns raised by
Okay.
parties.
Okay.
Section 3, the Community Benefit Agreement, no parties raised concerns. Does the Commission have any questions on that section?
Does anybody have a question? McLean.
Yeah, Mr. Burkowski, and this is more just of a terminology. If you could go down a little bit, Mr. Baker.
Yeah.
Keep going, sir. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Right there, D. The project shall make serious good faith efforts, yada, yada, yada. What's a serious good faith effort compared to your regular, everyday, commonplace good faith effort? And that term is used in Section 4.
No sense of humor allowed.
Yeah, actually, if the wording causes confusion, we can modify it, but I believe this was taken directly from offshore wind.
Okay.
So,
I was just curious if there's a distinction, is all.
so again, we did not start from a blank sheet with some of these things, so.
Okay.
Okay.
so.
Go ahead.
Actually, I'm one to take out words if they're not adding much, and so I think good faith is enough.
Okay. We
So
can do
I
that.
guess it would be, and then wherever else it is. Although I appreciate the serious nature of this.
Ba-dum-bum.
Okay.
I'm sorry, let me just.
I assume your advisors will be okay with that since I can't advise you all other than right here.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Okay. We use that again in 4, so.
Okay, well. Okay, so I think we're done with
Yes.
community benefit.
All right, that takes us to section 4, which is project change conditions for the evaluation. This also has to do with a serious good faith effort, though the terminology was challenged by OPC, who prefers the standard to be commercially reasonable. If OPC would like to speak to that, also OPC will be a frequent flyer, I think. So if you want to join us at the table.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm Mark Bird. That's MARKBYRD. On behalf of OPC. I think, yeah, our issue with just the good faith effort in this regard is that we didn't. I think that that would be enough. That the standard should be a commercially reasonable in order to make sure that the projects just do more than just a good faith effort to complete the project according to how the project was originally scoped. And I think beyond that, I think the argument is basically the same as how it's described in on pages 13 through 16 of our comments. And in general, you know, OPC believes that if there is a material change, that those material changes should be presented before the commission, and that we also recommended that the RFA administrator come up with like a list of like a more a thorough list of what constitutes material, just to avoid any kind of a confusion there. So if you have any questions, OPC is available.
Anyone else want to comment on this before I open it up to questions? Questions? Suchman. I have to say, before you start out, I would have thought commercially reasonable would be a lower standard than serious good faith. I guess I've learned something new today.
Well, and actually that is my question, I imagine that there is a fair amount of case law on what good faith means. And so I'm asking you if you've looked to whether commercially reasonable has been defined anywhere. I mean, I feel comfortable with good faith because I have a pretty good sense of that there's a fair amount of, if for some reason you find yourselves, or the developers find themselves in the court, the court's going to be constrained if it's given a term of art that is not really recognized in case law. So have you looked to see whether commercially reasonable is sort of a defined term in case law?
Yes.
Okay.
It is defined in case law, and I think probably the biggest difference between good faith and commercially reasonable is that good faith is more of a subjective standard in terms of what maybe the company or somebody at the company was thinking or trying to do, whereas a commercially reasonable standard is more of an objective in terms of you can actually compare what other companies would have done in a similar situation in an objective way.
Okay, so you've done the legal research, and there are cases that look to how commercially reasonable is defined.
Yes, that's definitely true. And if you wanted, I could do more research.
No, I just, I don't want to put something in language that then constrains the court to define what commercially reasonable means. So, and have you have you had conversations with developers about this language?
No, I think this was something that we noticed after the work group. So yeah, this hasn't been run by the work group.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Hoover.
Actually, it's for Mr. Burkowski. Was there a similar provision in the earlier battery storage proceedings that we had? I'm thinking about the original one for the pilot program where the utilities had to do two projects, one they owned and one they contracted out. Was there some provision in any of the agreements there regarding this?
Not that I recall. It's going back a long time, but I can't recall even how we ended up with this language, other than it may it may have had its genesis in offshore wind, but I can't even recall that. But so to answer your question, no, I can't recall.
All right, I guess what I'm concerned about is, in that process, we did have a lot of projects that sort of went off the rails for a variety of reasons. Particularly, stuff literally outside our control and the developer's control. So I'm wondering if this is going to be more protective of trying to make these projects be a reality.
Yeah, I can't answer that.
Okay, all right.
Any further questions? Seeing none?
I have one further comment.
Oh, sure, go ahead. Absolutely.
Yeah, just like to offer a little bit of rebuttal here. I do agree that we really didn't have a work group discussion about this. This was sort of one of those items that didn't sailed through without much discussion. But I did not like requiring a project developer making a material change to do certain things, like talk about effect on benefit cost analysis, things like that, because the project developer wasn't determining the benefit cost analysis. Our consultants were. What would happen in these situations is if someone made a material change and it affected conditions that were used to approve the project, we'd probably have to rerun that benefit cost analysis with the consultant. And the other thing related to having the RFA administrator develop a more complete list of changes, I do think that while we can add changes, we do also run the risk that if we're too prescriptive, risk of omission. Although we did point out a couple things that definitely should be changes of scope. So I'm not as much opposed to OPC's suggestion there as much as the risk of inclusion versus exclusion.
Any questions for Mr. Suchman?
Okay, so this was so under B, so you would want the project to do more than just notify the commission. Would you want to seek approval?
No, I think what OPC recommended with regards to, when they're making a notification, they were more detailed than what is in the wording, explain the change, the reason for the change, the expected effect on the project. All that can be added in my mind, but I really would stop at that
Okay.
in additional wording.
I mean, I'd be fine with just the project shall notify the commission of any material changes in project scope. I mean, the including but not limited to, sometimes can be interpreted to mean that it doesn't include something, even with the language that says including but not limited to. And then, you don't know now what could be a material change, but it could be something that's just not anticipated by anybody. So, Mr. Byrd, I mean, I'm always sort of concerned about the listing, the exclusio, whatever the Latin term is, because it's been interpreted in lots of different ways. I think on some level you're better protected if you just say if there's a material change in the project scope, you need to notify the commission. Anyway, that's.
I mean, I think that's reasonable. I just, and this may be unfounded, but I just sort of envision a situation where maybe one project thinks something's material and another project doesn't see something as material, and then you're basically leaving it to the projects to determine what they think is material.
But it's project specific. I mean, you could have, a change of battery chemistry that might not be material, depending on the project and what's being. I feel like there's like opportunity for mischief if you start to lay out all the different ways that something could be material and you're leaving off other things. I mean, material is always going to be subjective, but on some level it gives you better arguments for coming in and saying this was material and not having to have the response be, well, it's not among the listed items in the agreement. So.
Yes, go ahead if you'd like to comment.
Yeah, I would love to comment. Colin Schofield from Chalk Point again.
Bring the
Apologies.
microphone closer.
Don't necessarily disagree with kind of the whether to list or not to list, but I would just add that some amount of clarity on what constitutes material would be helpful, just so that both parties understand what the reporting obligation actually is. I think to your point, right, material can be interpretive, and we want to make sure that we are responsive to the need, but from an administrative perspective for both of us, not over inundating you with what can be very granular changes to the project because we don't know what material means. So I think just some amount of clarity on the characteristics or level of change that would necessitate.
So do you like the wording, or how do you feel about Part B?
I think the paragraph as written is fine. I think the description is
Okay.
helpful to indicate what categories, but obviously it's not limited to these, but it does indicate the level at which material is reached.
Gotcha. Thank you. Questions? Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I had to go back a bit into the old files to think about this particular provision. And I recall that we had something similar to this happen with offshore wind, where one of the projects made a change in the size of the turbines that they were using. And as a result, and I believe that's right, and I think this was the provision that required them to give us notification of it, and that set off a series of additional stuff that happened, including public hearings and things of that sort. In a sense, many parties took that as an opportunity to criticize the entire project, and it delayed it for several years. And of course, the epilogue is what it is, as we know now. So you can fit an awful lot under here, and that's. I guess I'm a little concerned about the language in A, but so I'm kind of listening to see if we're walking down a similar path, because what effectively happened the last time is that it gave the company it gave the commission notice of the change, but it kind of almost gave permission to make the change, as opposed to sticking with what they initially proposed and moving forward with it. They said, we can do all these new things because people were still upset, and we can expand it and make modifications, and then we ended up with nothing. So I'm really more interested in making certain that when the evaluation's complete, projects, the documents are set, we've approved everything, we move forward with what we got. So, that's not really a question, Mr. Chairman, it's more just an observation from what we had happen before and the end result.
You've been sitting next to Commissioner Suchman for too long.
Yes.
Okay. Unless there are any other questions or comments from the bench, let's move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The next section we had is about the commercial operation date. There's a number of items brought up here. Two of them are related, both one from OPC and one from Flatiron, where both of them were looking for effectively language around what happens if effectively a penalty-like provision if a battery storage project does not meet its operational date. So the Office of People's Counsel has proposed a 150 megawatt day fine unless the good cause has been determined. Flatiron set up a process by which the surety bond could potentially be used for compensation. So both parties should probably speak to their proposals for our consideration. And then I also have a note that we need to check with Potomac Edison about a comment they have in the footnote 5.
Okay, so let's start with People's Counsel, and then, yeah.
Yeah, so
You know, you might want to just change the microphone since you're the person who's going to be most frequently. There we go.
all right.
There we go.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think the main point of having a 150 day or $150 per megawatt a financial consequence for delay is just to provide an incentive for the projects to actually begin when they're supposed to. I don't think there's much more to it than that. And I think the $150 per megawatt amount is considered a commercially reasonable in terms of other similar the financial consequences for other similarly situated projects.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, for Flatiron, Chalk Point, I'm in the unique position of arguing for more stringent damages. Actually, we would suggest the $200 per megawatt day. And really, this is just for consistency with the RFA round 1. This was described in section 7.4, that there would be a period, if the COD is not achieved and not excused for good cause shown conditions, the surety bond can be drawn down at that level of $200 per megawatt per day until it's exhausted before termination is reached. It's important for us just because it provides some certainty there. We want to preserve this award, as long as possible, even if that means paying the damages. So I think that buffer is helpful for us from a certainty perspective.
Interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Borkowski. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to just say I agree with Flatiron in the way they represented this issue. This was simply an oversight. It should have been in the agreement from the beginning. We tried to pull from the RFA, but we did not, and I just recommend that we keep what was in the RFA, which is really, we should just ask OPC if they can agree that.
Well, I have a feeling that they're going to tell us right now.
Well, I think one thing we would like to ask of Mr. Schofield is if the surety bond would be replenished after it's drawn down. Is that the idea?
No, that's not the structure that's contemplated in the RFA. When it's exhausted at COD, if COD were achieved in normal order, the surety bond is returned. So essentially, it served its purpose at the end of it, whether it's exhausted or COD is achieved, either way.
Well, I understand PE wants to talk. Let me.
Their issues separate from this.
Oh, it's a separate
Yeah,
issue
yeah.
from this.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's
In
actually
that,
another item.
in that case, Commissioner Linton has a question.
Just a question about the fine. Is that being paid to the general fund or is it somewhere else?
Can I answer that?
Yes.
Yes, what we've done in talking about the escrow account is we really want all penalties to be going through the escrow account to help minimize the impact on ratepayers. So we in essence have created our own fund because it hasn't been specified anywhere in the NGEA, et cetera, and we just want to make the escrow account sort of the balancing area for all penalties.
Okay. You done, Obi?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Suchman.
Okay, so once the surety bond is drawn down so that it's zero, does that, at that point, do you just lose your right to continue with the project?
What the RFA contemplates is that it's at the commission's discretion whether to terminate the award at that point.
Okay.
You could
So
also
that would come before us
exactly.
in terms of termination. And then, Mr. Brewer, are you okay with the $200 fee amount that Mr. Schofield has suggested?
Yeah, I think we're okay with that amount, but I think we would want to see the surety bond replenished, because if it's not, then if it's completely exhausted and the project is still there, then there'd be nothing more to pay from that.
Okay,
And-
but
and
don't you think when they come before us that we'll have the discretion to let them know that they need to replenish the bond? I don't know that you necessarily have to put that in this agreement. That'll be up to us. I mean, we'll have a lot of discretion about whether the project can continue. It's hard to imagine that the commission would allow a project to continue without a bond. I'm just speaking
suppose,
for,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know, I mean, this could be, many, many years into the future with a different commission, but assuming it's us, I can't imagine that I would allow a project to go forward without a bond. So I don't know that this has to be in the agreement.
Okay.
Mr. Schofield, do you agree that that's, I mean, it's likely that you're going to have to replenish the bond?
Or pay out of pocket.
Or is that your expectation, if you were to appear before us after the bond is depleted?
That is not currently our expectation, just because that's not what the RFA had contemplated. But certainly, to preserve the award rather than have it terminate, it is at your discretion to set the conditions. And at that point, I assume we would be more than willing to post a bond to have the award continue if the project is trying to reach commercial operation at that stage. So, yeah, I think leaving it to the commission's discretion at the point in time when it occurs is a sensible
Okay.
path forward.
I guess then my question is, if OPC would feel more comfortable in making that clear, would you have a problem in clarifying the language to require that the bond be kept at its whatever the designated amount is, and if you draw down, it has to be replenished?
There's a cost that we've not contemplated currently.
Okay, I see. So it would be an additional cost for the project.
Right, for the
Yeah, it
developer.
would add
Okay.
exposure, each day that it's drawn down, and then we
Okay.
have to replenish.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the, forgive me, Commissioner Linton.
Sure, sorry. So I'm just going to point back to the comments I made earlier, and I'm looking at section D. Basically, the first sentence, which has a lot of flexibility there for all kinds of, we had a problem with the local governments on a getting a zoning permit, or some equipment is caught in a boat or somewhere or something, and you just get constant requests and delays. And I just, to me, if we have shall adhere to a commercial operation date as 5A, then we shouldn't be encouraging flexibility, wiggle room, all this other kinds of things later on in the project. Again, I'm just thinking back to other projects that we've had, we approved, and the good cause shown and the delays had nothing to do with the project we proposed. We accepted and approved. It was improvements that were made so that the original project was perfectly fine. So, I guess if you want a comment from me, I would suggest that good cause be a more strict standard, something that is a higher standard than just coming in and saying, we just need more time, and then the commission has to go through a whole process, there's comments and everything else. So maybe extraordinary circumstances or something that truly mean, the point is that we want these built. And so we want everybody that's participating in this to make sure it gets done.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah,
Good morning, Commissioners.
No, I'm recognize. Well, let me recognize Flatiron first, and then you.
sure. Yes, so just to respond to that point, I think we also agree that we want the projects to be built. Good cause shown as defined in the RFA was, I believe, 4 specific instances, including PJM interconnection queue delays, permitting, delivery of critical project equipment, utility construction of interconnection facilities and network upgrades, and then a 5th, demonstrable force majeure events. We think this is helpful because it is categories of events that are largely outside of our control, and having an adjustment mechanism in a COD that would otherwise be binding is helpful as we're going through the project development process. So we do not intend to come back to you for events that are within our control. It's really, I think, to catch categories of events that we cannot control ourselves.
Mr. Burkowski, and then
Yeah, I
Josh.
just want to say that we have deliberated on good cause shown, and basically it made it into the RFA, and the definition, as Colin has explained, is in definition number 20. So we've actually defined good cause shown.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd like. Well, okay. Make it quick though. 'cause
Okay,
I wanna
so
get-
so actually, so I don't like either in statute or in Comar anything that sort of defines what we can do, as opposed to what the parties can argue. So having us have the authority to extend something only for good cause shown is not something that I think is a good idea. I mean, that's sort of defining what our authority is. I think the language needs to be changed to say that a party may argue for or may request extension of the proposed COD for up to 24 months for good cause shown.
Do we need to do that? Because isn't that just a part of our
it's-
ordinary practice?
No, I think it's defining what our authority is. We should not be doing that in either in statute or in, well, I mean, the legislature can do that by statute, but we shouldn't be doing that in regulation.
Just to say, I will say, I think that might be in statute, that
is in
24-month extension.
That's okay, it's in
Just so you're
statute, but we're defining we're putting this in a provision that is our authority. I just think it's not appropriate for us to be defining what our authority is. I mean, we're laying out the requirements on the parties. This actually lays out a requirement on us, and I think that's not appropriate in this agreement. It doesn't change the nature of what this is providing. It's just taking us out of the equation.
Okay, let me go to the next commenter.
Sure. Good morning, Commissioners. Evan Vaughn, EVAN VAUGHAN. I'm Executive Director of the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Coalitions. We represent the developers here as well as offshore wind developers and solar developers at utility scale. Commissioner Linton, just because you've raised this a few times, I wanted to address your comments about the flexibility inherent in the development process for these projects. Given that there has been so many delays and changes both at PJM and with federal policy and a greater degree of uncertainty around all projects of all stripes, not specific to these technologies. Really, more flexibility is better if we want to guarantee that a project actually gets built rather than less. I think what happened with offshore wind, and I've seen this in New Jersey and Maryland and other places, is that it basically, the development timeline was long enough that inevitably things did change. And if you have it bound to a very firm set of initial characteristics of the project, it's almost impossible, if any delays happen, for the developer to meet those exact specifications. So I just wanted to add that context since you had brought up that point a few times. Thank you.
So,
Okay, any further, Commissioner Linton, do you have a
well,
comment?
I appreciate the comment, and I guess I'm referring to, as you've referenced, the offshore wind experience. But we've also seen it on the solar side as well, where projects are consistently extended, and at some point we have to build something, and so I'm just concerned that if we're putting the actual wiggle room in the agreement, we're setting ourselves out up front for continuing to embrace all of these little changes that happen along the way. So we're basically continuing to repeat the same challenge or same problem that we've already seen, and that's my concern. Like I said, I want to see the projects built. We need them built, and so. But if we keep saying, we're going to postpone it 6 months for this, and we'll charge you a fee, but you got to postpone it another 12 months for that, you eventually get to a point where nothing gets done. And that's kind of where we are now with some of the projects we approved 5 or 6 years ago. So that's it.
Okay.
I've said it several times. I won't say it anymore.
Oh, there's one more item before we get to PE. Merrick, so Mr. Vaugh, there was a footnote 6. There was a debate about the amount of information that needed to be in Clause D of this section. Basically, it looks like Merrick versus the work group leader in terms of the issue. If you would like to address that, or if that was resolved in the work group, we don't need to. But
Well, I'll let Merrick speak for themselves, but I believe that they did not comment on it. I don't know if they were relying on a footnote or, I assume that if parties did not comment on it, they were okay with where we actually landed.
Yeah, that's an assumption I would make as well, but I'll give you a very quick
I
opportunity
just
if you
wanted
want.
to say I agree. We're not going to raise this issue today. Thank you.
Okay,
great.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to the issue that I think PE raised.
yeah, so Potomac Edison raised a concern with the construction dates may impact SOS procurements. I don't think this is a contractual issue as much as this is just something we might need to deal with in the future. So,
Okay.
Agreed. Thanks, Mr. Baker. Yeah, as the SOS procurements go out up to 2 years.
If you could just identify yourself for the purposes of the record.
My apologies,
That's
Mr.
okay.
Chair. Mark Zucca, Potomac Edison, MARKZUCCA.
You're a frequent flyer. You're entitled to forget.
Yeah, as the procurements for SOS for residential go out up to 2 years, depending on the product, if this was to be priced into that product, the uncertainty could affect those bids. And so, again, I don't know that it necessitates anything in this document, but that was the basis for our comment.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Zucca? All right. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Zucca, what's the remedy or what's the fix? Or is there one? Or is it just more of a FYI?
I think there could potentially be changes to the process for SOS. I mean, we could use a proxy price, for that, that all bidders are intended to use. Also, I mean, if the model is changed, I mean, as is discussed here, if there's a legislative change that would then bring all of the costs and benefits into the same surcharge and be with the utilities, then I think it avoids this issue.
Okay, all right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Let's move on.
thank you. All right, that finalizes Section 5. Give me a second. All right, Section 6, there was a footnote item, but once again, that item was not brought up in the parties' comments from Merrick. Also, in that section, there is, though, a condition that says anyways, yeah, so there was only one footnote item that was possibly an issue, but to what we said earlier, it was not brought up in the parties' comment, so. I don't know if any commissioners have questions in this section.
Yeah, no questions.
Okay. All right. I think this takes us to our pricing schedule issue in section 8. So, before we do that, there's section 7, the
Yeah.
decommissioning plan. That was all consensus, unless the commissioner has any questions.
Commissioner McLean has a question.
Sorry, Mr. Baker.
Yeah.
On, it looks like it is item, I guess, 6D, construction approval.
Yes.
Um,
Page 8.
It says, Commission may require the project to agree to additional conditions for construction approval. How's that going to work? And like, what kind of conditions? And it looks like other state agencies can also weigh in.
Yeah, thank you. We have separate from this, a whole separate construction approval process, and it's laid out in COMAR regulations. We establish COMAR 20.50, Chapter 14, which basically, for projects this size, is very similar in a lot of respects to a CPCN process. We have the application available from the Commission's website. We have the regulations. All this is doing, this particular clause here, is just saying, just like a CPCN process, at the end of the process, the Commission may require additional conditions for construction approval. So that's the only intent of this particular clause.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yep, back to 7.
All right. So 7 was the decommissioning section. There was no party comments. Do commissioners have any questions on this section?
Anybody have a question on the decommissioning? Okay.
All right, this takes us to section 8, which has one of our big non-consensus items. This is Hughes v. Talon. A number of parties made comments on this, OPC staff, a number of storage companies. Yeah, so I don't know, Mr. Borkowski, how you'd like to tee this up, but I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think the only thing I have to say on it is the fact that according to many stakeholders, we cannot require a project to clear an auction, or else that runs afoul of the FERC requirements and PJM's minimum welfare price rule, and that was the Hughes v. Talon issue. The problem with not requiring a project to clear the auction is the fact that if you're not clearing the auction, you're not getting capacity revenues, which come into the escrow account and are used to offset customer rates. So if a project does not clear the auction, there's a lot of risk, but we cannot, because of the PJM OPR, require it to clear the auction. So various parties have made comments. I think the best that we can do is codified in the rules is, we want the project to clear the auction. So, there's market seller offer requirements in PJM's capacity procedures, and the best we can do is say that if there's any violation of that, then the commission should be able to level penalties in that particular case. But we cannot, from everything that I've been educated on through this process, require projects to clear the auction. And I think a lot of the parties will be more eloquent in discussing this than me. So I think it's best to
Okay.
let them talk.
All right. Let's go to the parties who want to comment on this. Let's start with, we'll start with People's Council.
Mr. Chairman, we pretty much agree with what Mr. Borkowski mentioned, which is that the main issue here is that the ratepayers who are paying the ESCCs shouldn't pay the ESCCs only to not get the value in terms of the capacity that they paid for, but at the same time, if you condition the receipt of the payment on clearing the capacity market, then that does run afoul of Hughes v. Talon. OPC recommended some tweaks to both of the sections, and with regard to the second section, OPC believes that the concerns that essentially instead of having clearing the auction be the hurdle, it should be it should kind of be something more along the lines of what's set forth in section 7-1226 A2, which is a Maryland law that specifies or that says that that the commission may specify that for continued receipt of payment, an applicant shall demonstrate to the satisfaction of the commission that the applicant's energy storage device is available. So, and that's sort of a paraphrasing of what that law says, and so rather than having the projects necessarily clear the auction, that they should at least be able to show the commission that they are available from an operational and a commercial, available operationally and commercially. And so overall, OPC recommends keeping both alternatives. We think that they actually do address two different things, but tweaking the language as set forth on page 10 of OPC's comments.
Okay. If you're done, I'd like to go to Merrick. And again, I'd like everybody to comment who would like to comment, and then we'll go to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a few things here. First of all, Merrick believes that not requiring the projects to clear the auction is absolutely essential, as several folks have said, to the credibility of this program and the legality of the program. And so the ESCC payment should not be conditioned on a project clearing the capacity market. The Supreme Court was very clear in Hughes v. Talon. I'm just stating this for the record because it hasn't been. They said, and I quote, "So long as a state does not condition a payment of funds on the capacity clearing the auction, the program," and this part I'm paraphrasing, "would not suffer a fatal defect." So Supreme Court is crystal clear on that piece. The way that this legislation was designed, somebody who was part of the lobbying process on this, one of the safeguards that was put in place to make sure that ratepayers are protected from the concept of a project simply not participating in the market is that if you, as any kind of generator, possess capacity interconnection rights, there is now a must-offer requirement as of a few years ago. This is a new change. PJM filed on December 20th, 2024, that eliminated the categorical exemption from the must-offer requirement for intermittent resources, capacity storage resources, and hybrids, beginning with the BRA, the base residual auction of 2026 and 27 delivery year, which was taking place last year in 2025. And so this will be the case going forward for all future BRAs. And so given that there is a must-offer requirement to possess CIRs, which all of these projects will do as transmission-connected storage projects, there is a safeguard in the sense that PJM would penalize projects that are not offering into the auction. The clearing piece, I think we are all aware that the market is so short right now that there is almost certainly to be a clearing of projects. Now, admittedly, there is a risk in the tail end, I think, but these projects still want to make money, and ultimately they're going to be incentivized to participate in the market. In order
That's exactly what I was thinking, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I think that's everything I wanted to get across. One other just nuance. We do recommend making the distinction clear in the standardized agreement that a project must offer its, and I quote, accredited capacity, as opposed to its nameplate capacity in year one of the award, because PJM's RPM, the reliability pricing model, does not have takes that into account. And so if you just have nameplate as the requirement, then projects would be in a difficult position as time goes on.
Got it. Any other parties want to comment before I open it up to questions?
We had comments also from staff and Zenobi about these two. I don't know that Zenobi came to this hearing, but staff is here.
All right.
They are here. Zenobi is here.
Okay. Well, let's turn to staff.
Morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Matthew Hall, Matthew on behalf of Commission staff. We did make comments saying that we did not believe that Alternative 2 complied with the requirements of Hughes v. Talon. It seems like that issue has pretty much been resolved, that everyone agrees that you cannot condition payments on clearing the auction at this point, so I think that our comments have been adequately addressed.
Okay. Zenobi?
Good morning. Lawrence Copson from Zenobi, LAURENCECOPSON. Nothing to add beyond what Evan communicated on behalf of Marek. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Questions? Commissioner Suchman.
Well, Mr. Freeman, did you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Freeman, if you want to add on.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to something that Marek said. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I'll have to stand on my tippy toes.
Well, it's good exercise.
I agree that the categorical exemption for intermittent resources was eliminated in PJM. So if you have capacity interconnection rights, I agree you have to participate, but you don't have to clear. So the concern here was, well, there are several things going on. The ratepayers are paying the ESCC for installed capacity. So if something is 100 megawatts installed, that's what the ratepayers are paying for. However, the value they're getting is based on unforced capacity, which is this, or accredited capacity, which is the ELCC adjusted amount. So the thought was, if these projects aren't offering in their accredited capacity in auctions such that they do clear, because they could offer in as they're required to and not clear. Their offers could be above the clearing price. And there may be something deliberate or not about that. It's certainly not out of the realm of possibility that a storage asset wouldn't clear. So the thought was, we'd like to see at least the accredited capacity clear, and if not, then the ESCC payment would be lower based on the difference between the accredited capacity and what actually cleared times the resource clearing price for the delivery year. That was the impetus behind that. And this is also connected to the performance assessment interval issue, which I guess is coming up later. The more capacity you clear, the more at risk you are for non-performance penalties. So, and since the ratepayers hold all the non-performance risk above the duration threshold, then there's a mismatch in incentives between clearing and the non-performance penalty risk. And I think those two things really need to be seen together as ratepayer risk rather than as separate issues. They are connected.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Commissioner Suchman?
Okay, so Mr. Freeman, I think you were starting to go to my question, which is whether there could be a disincentive for the the project to clear. I mean, I understand what you're saying is you know, you have concerns about projects receiving the credits where they haven't cleared the market. But you know, how do we make sure that the projects are actually bidding in a way that would ensure that they would clear the market, or at least come close to that, as opposed to a project that perhaps is gaming the system and has a disincentive for clearing and yet still gets the credit. So I mean, I understand that at this point, because they're capacity short, they're going to want to try to clear everything. But I always worry about the situation where there could be some element of gaming, and we want to avoid that. Right. So is gaming your concern?
Yes.
Okay.
And gaming and its relationship to the non-performance risk. The only way to do it would be to require them to be 100% price takers in every auction. So they would be a zero offer, you know, X megawatts, zero offer, and they would be at the bottom of the supply curve where there are other price takers. Price taker meaning they're not offering strategically. They're not offering to try to clear at least some megawatts at a higher price than what is expected to clear.
Right, they're trying to drive up the price in the capacity market. So how do we do this and yet still be consistent with Hughes?
I don't think you can require 100% price taking. I don't know legally what the issues are, but
that's where we have to focus on what's legal.
Right, let's go to Borkowski and then back to Merrick.
Yeah, I would just say that we tried to address this in alternative one, you know, by the fact that, you know, they have to offer, you know, into the auction, and basically they have rules at PJM, you know, the market seller offer caps, which, you know, they have to offer at the cost incurred by the resource, you know, minus projected revenues, and if there's a violation of that, then, you know, they can be fined through PJM, and we're recommending that the commission can also fine them because it's in our interest that they clear the auction. So there's very tightly, you know, written rules around, you know, all this, and I don't know that you can do more than that.
Okay, Merrick.
Just to add, I think we're getting to the PAI discussion, the performance assessment interval, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's important that the projects be shielded from some of the PAI risk above their duration, because if a project is being penalized for things totally out of their control, it sets up a situation where a developer could be facing bigger penalties by participating in the market and not attaining, you know, their performance that they're supposed to. So, you know, I kind of agree, I think, with the OPC that they are connected issues, but I think that the way to solve this is to make it not unappealing for the developers to participate in the market, which is by partially shielding them from risk outside of their control, not reasonable performance risk, as well as the bonus structure for performing above what the projects are expected to perform in the market.
Okay, and go ahead.
Just to be clear, so you're comfortable with alternative one? Is that's the first paragraph?
Apologies, I need to just quickly read it.
That's fine, and
Yep.
but would oppose alternative two, just as you're reading that.
Thanks for your patience. I didn't have this exact language in mind.
No, take your time.
Yeah, I think alternative one would be our preference here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? All right, let's move on to the next subtopic.
Chair, with your permission, I think I'd like to skip the next item I had on the list, which is the non-bypassable cost recovery mechanism, and go to this issue
Sure.
of the penalties.
Yeah,
I think they're
yeah.
related, and then come back
Yeah.
and do all the issues related to the surcharge as one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right, give me a second to find that page. All right, so this is page 12 of the filed document. Last part of part 8, so it's 8HI, bottom of, or middle of page 12. There's another section also on page 13. Both of these are penalty provisions if for failing to clear auction. So our staff had recommended deleting this based on comments from the Office of People's Counsel and the Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative. It appeared they have supported retaining this language. It might be helpful if they discuss their view of retaining it in relation to if we keep option 1 versus option 2, or OPC had recommended alternative language and how this would play with that alternative language. But yeah, so those were the 3 parties that commented at the bottom of page 12 on this item.
Okay, so OPC, SMECO, and who else?
Staff.
Staff. Okay, let's go to staff first.
So the reason why we had recommended removing this language, or at least expressed concern with the language, it relates to the same Hughes v. Talon concern that we had with back in 8C. To us, to staff, this language seems to kind of be an end run around that the Hughes v. Talon decision, where you're basically saying if you fail to clear the auction at 100%, we're going to reduce your payments commensurate to the capacity that didn't clear. And the Hughes v. Talon decision, that was limited. It did say specifically that it was limited, but the conclusion in Justice Ginsburg's decision seems to be pretty broad, to say that you cannot condition payments to clearing the capacity auction, and this would reduce the ESCC payments based on whether you cleared the auction or not, and that seems to be in violation of Hughes v. Talon. So that was our concern. We are certainly open to hearing other reasons for why this doesn't violate that provision, though.
Okay, let's go to People's Counsel and then SMECO.
People's Counsel recommends retaining this provision because it actually reflects it reflects Maryland law. A Maryland law says that the Commission shall incorporate penalties for non-performance and underperformance in the contract, including withholding payment that reflects the degree of underperformance for energy storage devices that fail to meet availability metrics. So that's exactly what this provision would do. If a project underperforms, then the project should be, then it would withhold payment, at the ratio that reflects the degree of underperformance. And so this isn't tying. This doesn't raise the same issues as Hughes because it doesn't. It doesn't guarantee that a project a wholesale capacity rate different than the PJM clearing price. It just reduces the ESCC payments when the project fails to provide the capacity value reflected in the agreement, and it's also based on Maryland law rather than PJM's clearing price.
Just to be clear, you support keeping this language even if we adopt alternative one that we discussed earlier? I just want to make sure I understand your position.
I don't know if I have alternative one in front of me, but yeah, I don't think alternative one had this in it, so I think we would have to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I understood your position. Is SMECO in the House?
I don't believe they are. We received a
All right.
communication.
Well, before I open it up to questions, if staff has any further comments, and then I'd also like to give Mr. Borkowski an opportunity to comment if he wants to.
So I did want to respond to something in OPC's comments. Staff does recognize that Maryland law does say that the commission needs to implement penalties for non-performance. We just believe that this needs to be done in a way that doesn't tie that or tether that, to put it in the Hughes v. Talent context, to whether or not the capacity clears the capacity market. There may be other ways to do that. I have a member of staff here who might be able to address some ways to maybe do that if you would like to hear that.
Well, let's uncover that if we have to in questioning. Mr. Borkowski, do you have any comment you'd like to make before I throw it open to questions?
Yeah, thank you. The only comment I would make, besides agreeing mostly with staff, is the fact that, this interpretation of the NGEA, where, the commission shall incorporate penalties for non-performance and underperformance in the contract, including withholding the payment that reflects a degree of underperformance for energy storage devices that fail to meet availability metrics. I think the key term there is availability. To me, availability is operational. There's an operational interpretation, and I think that the OPC interpretation, in my opinion, is overly broad to go beyond operational and into, just how you offer capacity into the market.
Okay, questions? No questions? Shocking.
Also-
Well, I'm sorry, did I?
No, it's just, this is probably not a question. It's more of a concern. If we know that there is a real risk that this provision will be taken to the Court of Appeals and challenged under Hughes, I guess for OPC, is there some other way that you can assure that there are some penalty provisions that would apply without sort of putting the entire program in jeopardy? I mean, if there is an obvious legal risk, which I believe there is in this, maybe you can, and maybe you don't have to respond now, but you can think about perhaps another way that you can get to the penalty concerns that you have without putting the whole project at risk. So I guess that's just a...
Yeah. I'd like to recognize Evan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to just add that one of the performance metrics contemplated in the RFA is that the applicant, the developers, are responsible for underperformance that results in their capacity accreditation going down. So initially they are given the kind of class ELCC at PJM, but then if they, through their operations, underperform what the Class E LCC is, and critically, I think, not in just one capacity auction, but consistently across different auctions that don't require clearing or not, the developer is responsible for that underperformance. And so I think that is already contemplated in the RFA, a way that if these projects are not performing up to spec, that they're going to be dinged for it. But you don't have to get into this. What I agree is a really, if it's not a violation of FUSI talent, it is like right up on the line.
Yeah.
And-
Yes, go ahead, John.
Yeah, and I would just say that that particular item is in 9C of the agreement, which we haven't gotten to yet.
Okay. Staff, did you
No, unless
say?
you have any other questions, but we're,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, then let's move on. Let's move back up to, where are we going?
All right, we actually are going to go to 9 to get into the performance penalties and bonuses.
Okay, go down to
So
9.
Section 9, we, just remind myself here. All right, so there's two penalty provisions. Well, actually, one's a penalty and one's a bonus. Section D is the penalty provision. The Office of People's Counsel, SMECO, and the Exelon utilities all performed proposed variations of penalties that should be paid by the storage project if they failed to clear the auction, or not even clear, just what, like, their performance, and I'll let them talk about their proposals. The storage parties filed comments arguing that they should pay no penalty, mostly around the idea that the RFA did not envision it going above, that they would pay these penalties, and staff filed comments supportive of that position, but potentially changes in future solicitations. So probably allow the parties that want the penalty to explain their positions and what they're recommending, and then those who are opposed to it to present their positions, and then Mr.
Okay, so
Barkowski
basically
will lead us.
OPC, storage parties, and Exelon.
Yeah.
So we'll do it in that order. OPC first.
Thank you, and I do appreciate the concern about the RFA not spelling this out or not including the shared risk idea. Nevertheless, I do think it's not fair to put all of the non-performance penalty risk on the ratepayers above the duration threshold. For one thing, what gives the projects the incentive to make sure they will perform above the duration threshold should a system emergency occur? If all the risk is on another party, then I don't see why they would care one way or another. However, if the risks were shared, they would care. The other thing about this is, and I'm not trying to say that this is a frequent occurrence, but there are rare occurrences in PJM when there are consecutive hours of performance assessment intervals. We saw it in 2022 with Winter Storm Elliott. From December 24th into Christmas Day, there were 17 hours plus of 17 consecutive hours of performance assessment penalties. And in that case, if you just took off the 4 hours that the developers are on the hook for and left the rest to the ratepayers, the cost of the penalty is enormous in that case. Again, it's a rare occurrence, but it can happen. It happened in the polar vortex winter of 2014. The consecutive hours weren't nearly as extended as they were in 2022, but there were hours, consecutive hours, that were in excess of these duration thresholds. So I think that in fairness, and certainly from a market-based point of view, there's no buyer in the commercial market who would accept this provision. It's open-ended risk beyond the threshold. It is literally open-ended. So that pretty simple argument.
Okay, are you concluded?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, let's hear from the storage parties and then Exelon, and then we'll go to questions.
So, I think that, just as a opening piece of this, the fact that the RFA did not contemplate changing this risk profile beyond what is stated in the RFA. So the fact that developers are responsible for performance up to their duration during a PAI and carry the risk for that, but then are not responsible after that, that's what was stated in the RFA. And it's really impossible to change that after the fact without really going to like redoing the entire RFA, because that would add a cost and risk that developers did not contemplate in their prices. Getting to the substance of I would say the merits of the argument outside of what already happened with this RFA, I do want to say a few things. We would also argue that this risk allocation remains the way it is going forward in round 2 of this solicitation for a few reasons. First of all, there's literally nothing that these developers can do for that duration risk beyond how long their project is able to operate. I was trying to find this language just in response to OPC, so if I find it, I'll either forward it afterwards or stand back up later. But I believe there's a provision in the PJM Open Access Tariff that says a resource cannot sort of augment itself with other resources to escape a PAI penalty. So I'm really not sure how a battery would be able to perform above its duration, just given the physical limitations of the system. The PAI, just to state a few facts about that, the PAI did have a threshold change in, I believe it was 2023. So PJM changed the triggering criteria for PAI to the point where it is a very, very attenuated tail end risk. Not that it's non-existent, but to give an example, you all will recall the emergency this summer when there was a max gen event called during the July 4th heat wave. That was not a PAI. It did get close, but it was not, even under those pretty dire situations. And so there has not been a PAI event since this change happened. And I think that one final point I would make here is that obviously the legislative intent was to incentivize storage, to get storage built in Maryland. And part of the reason for this legislation was PJM's markets are not functioning in such a way to get storage online. And it does provide a benefit if these to consumers, if these projects come online and start to reduce the capacity exposure that ratepayers are currently paying through the capacity markets, especially if a cap expires after the next BRA. And so if a developer in the second tranche of this procurement was exposed to this risk beyond their duration, they would price it into the bids, and you would see the bid prices come up very high. So ultimately, this is a judgment call, I think, that the PSC has to weigh, under these new PAI conditions, how likely are those events to happen, given that PJM has tightened up the scrutiny around that versus seeing higher prices on the upfront. So essentially what I'm saying is ratepayers are paying for this either way. It's just they're baking it in across the duration of the contract, and they're paying in an event that it's an extreme outside emergency situation.
Looks like People's Counsel has a comment to respond to that. I'll allow you to do that. Then I want to go to the utilities.
Thank you.
And then John Burkowski.
We've heard conflicting statements. On the one hand, Marek says the risk of PAIs beyond the duration threshold has been significantly decreased by PJM's new processes and procedures to get to a PAI, which I agree with. But on the other hand, they say that if this shared risk were instituted in the contract, the ESCC payments would go, I think he said, way up. So I'm wondering, which is it? How are you pricing the risk? How are you valuing the risk? Is it PAIs in excess of 4 hours have very low probability, and therefore you don't need to be compensated at a level that is way above the ESCC offers? Or is it the risk is greater than what's been portrayed, and therefore not only are the ratepayers subject to that risk, but there's been no mitigation of it in the contract? So I'm wondering, like, what is the value of the risk?
Okay, well, let's hear from Merrick, then, as I said, we'll go to the utilities or anybody else, but go ahead, Merrick.
Yeah, I mean, my short response to that is the tail end risk for a single project. That risk, if you look at the total amount of costs that's associated with that, a single project, really could be put potentially into bankruptcy from that. Whereas, that amount of exposure on the entirety of the Maryland rate base is not going to be as material. One project not fulfilling its PAI obligations in this outside emergency situation is a small piece of the total, Maryland consumption, whereas a single project developer is going to have, potentially project-ending consequences from bearing that risk. And so I think it creates a imbalance where the price on the upfront in order to justify the investment really could leave real benefits to consumers on the table for getting this capacity built and deployed.
Okay, do the Exelon utilities care to comment?
Good morning, Chair Barber and Commissioners. Crystal Barnett on behalf of BGE, and I'm accompanied today by David Bloom, who is the BGE Senior Manager of Energy Acquisition.
Yep. Thanks, and good morning, everyone. It's David Bloom, D-A-V-I-D B-L-O-O-M. I prepared a presentation here, and we can kind of briefly jump through it.
Well, I was going to say, informally, I've been allowing people to consume, pardon me, 5 minutes. Can you do it in 5, or try to?
I'm going to do it in less, hopefully.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and so really the presentation just sets up some of the summary comments that we filed on July 1st. Can we jump to the next slide? Thanks. Yeah, so this slide I think I can sort of just briefly touch on here. This just gives a little bit of background on how the PJM capacity performance works. I want to note, sort of maybe before I go any further, that we're specifically commenting on Section 9E. The Exelon utilities did not comment on the duration threshold and some of the non-performance provisions that I think are in 9D. Just want to maybe pause and just acknowledge that I'm going to focus on.
Well, if you're not on 9D,
yeah, so
should we just wait?
Yeah.
Yeah,
John?
I would like to let him continue because I want to have a rebuttal that ties it all together.
Go right ahead, sir.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Yes. So, okay. So with that, here I just give some background on sort of how the PJM bonus payments work. In instances when there is a PJM performance assessment interval, capacity resources that do overperform beyond the expectation, those resources are eligible for what's called a PJM bonus credit. And here, what I'm really setting up is, I think we could maybe jump to the next slide. Yeah, thanks. So what we're presenting here is that the Next Generation Energy Act defines that all PJM capacity revenues shall accrue to customers, and we're making the point that we see the PJM bonus payments are part of those PJM capacity revenue. But more importantly, this is a risk-reward alignment issue. As the discussion that was just occurring, I think, was highlighting some of the who's in the best seat to manage that risk. Given what was discussed around the duration threshold and the likelihood of PJM performance assessment intervals, if the customers are bearing that risk, then we think that the risk-reward alignment here is that any PJM bonus payments should then go to customers in the chance that those do actually happen. So really, I think in the next slide, just our recommendation is that we modify this one section, I think 9E, just to say that that any allocated bonus performance credits are used to offset the energy storage capacity credit. And if not in this round, then and in any future rounds that the commission conducts.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Burkowski?
Yes, thank you. I guess I'd like to just talk about performance in general when you have these performance assessment intervals, and then get to bonuses and penalties, and work our way back to some of the earlier comments. But when you have an energy storage device and you're in an emergency situation, and you have a performance assessment interval, which is, by the way, very rare and probably even more rare in the future based on the new PJM rules that were discussed. I mean, I looked at over the last 10 years, and most of these performance interval assessment intervals events, I've counted 4, and the only one that lasted more than 2 hours was Winter Storm Elliott. So first off, they're very rare. But what happens, let's say you have a hypothetical 10 megawatt, 4-hour duration energy storage device. So you got 40 megawatt hours, and you have one of these emergencies. Okay, so the way the bonuses and penalties work at PJM is the fact that during these performance assessment intervals, if you over generate your capacity, your accredited capacity, you get a bonus. And if you underperform, you get a penalty. And basically, it's all outside of the general market. It's sort of the sum of all the bonuses,
They're netted out.
yeah, they're netted out basically. So it doesn't affect the capacity market at all.
Right.
So that's the first concept, and one of my rebuttals to Exelon's point about it being market revenues, which statute clearly says that market revenue should basically go to the ratepayers. But even FERC in its 2015 decision on this particular PJM bonus penalty structure basically stated, and I won't repeat the whole footnote 19, but they basically state that non-performance charges and performance bonus payments are a zero-sum, out-of-market transfer among resource owners. So they are not capacity market revenues and in violation of the statute as is claimed by Exelon, in my opinion. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but I think the clear language in the FERC order says as much. But if you have this hypothetical 40 megawatt hour device, and you have one of these performance assessment intervals, the energy storage device owner needs to make a decision, an operating decision. Remember, we are not, as a state agency, responsible for the dispatch of that particular energy device. We're only basically running the capacity, but we're not responsible for the dispatch. And bonuses and non-performance are dispatch decisions. And an energy storage device owner is incentivized to maybe overshoot its accredited capacity to get a bonus, because and they're responsible for the dispatch, not the state. At the same time, they carry some risks that they may not be able to meet all the requirements during the performance assessment interval, and then at risk of a non-performance charge. That's an operating decision that has to be made by each energy storage device owner, because, if you have a theoretical 40 megawatt hour unit, 10 megawatts capacity, and you had an emergency, if the ELCC for that particular device is, let's say, 50%, then its accredited capacity is 5 megawatts. So it needs to at least generate 5 megawatts for, as long as that performance assessment interval is in place, or a non-performance charge will be assessed. So a 40 megawatt hour device, 10 megawatt capacity, would generate 5 megawatts for 8 hours to consume. If it's a multi-day event, theoretically, during evening it could recharge and be available for the next day in a multi-day event. But basically, at the end of 8 hours, it would have exhausted, its capacity from a megawatt hour perspective, and then start to incur, non-performance charges. So the whole point of this long explanation I'm trying to make here is the fact that these are dispatch decisions, because, the energy storage device owner can sit there and say, well, this, in my opinion, based on data that we have, this should be over, this emergency should be over in 4 hours, and it may choose, instead of generating at 5 megawatts, which is its accredited capacity, it may choose to get that bonus by generating, 10 megawatts for 4 hours under the assumption it's going to be over. That's an incentive to the energy storage device owner to overgenerate to get that bonus. Likewise, if it extended 5 hours and they're short, then they basically, would get that penalty. So the whole idea of bonuses and penalties, it's really based on decisions that are made by the energy storage device operator and the dispatch, and really should be out because of the fact that, we're not influencing it any, because we don't, have jurisdiction over dispatch. We need to provide the proper incentives for these energy storage device owners to make the right decisions in a capacity emergency. And I feel like what we've tried to do by allowing those device owners to retain the bonuses, but also, giving them risk if they don't perform up to their storage duration. That's not a one-sided decision. It's all based on the fact that these decisions have to be made by these energy storage device operators, and you want to give them the proper incentives to act during an emergency.
So before I open this up to questions, John, so my understanding of this, of the way these things were calculated, is that over and underperformance were netted out over a period of time, usually over a year. That at least is the way it is typically done, I think, and then an assessment is made at the end of the year. So the operator, I'm certain this is like for the RMR contracts, I believe they do it that way. Are you saying basically that that's the way this happens in this instance?
Yeah, I'm not an expert, but I understand the non-performance charges. Actually, they have a monthly cap and an annual cap.
Oh, okay. So it's sooner than at the end of the year.
Yeah, I understand that the monthly cap, there's a stop loss cap, and I believe it's the base capacity market revenue. It's capped at the capacity market revenue for that month, which would be the maximum penalty. Plus, if they earned any bonuses during that month, they would be clawed back. So, and then there's an annual cap, and I think that's in the comments from one of the other parties somewhere. But I think you have a lot more people, some of the developers maybe can speak to this a little bit better than I can, but there is, as opposed to what OPC's witness stated was an open-ended risk beyond the threshold. Well, open-ended, only to the extent that, you know, you exceed a monthly cap or a annual cap. And, you know, so I don't believe it's totally open-ended risk. And why should a developer care? I think was addressed through my comments. You know, you know, developers are incentivized through the, you know, PJM, you know, bonus system to basically do the right thing in an emergency. But they have to also do that in light of understanding the risk of non-performance.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to questions and to you and to Ben Baker. I'd like to get us to lunch somewhere between 12 and 12:30. So if you can just park that in the back of your mind. Okay, questions. Commissioner Suchman.
So, Mr. Burkowski,
Yeah.
when a PAI is called, and it can be called for just like a 5-minute period, it could be very short. The penalty is assessed because why?
Well, because of the fact that the capacity resources across PJM are short of what is needed, and that particular unit does not, generating unit does not.
Okay, so, but in terms of the particular storage unit, it's not able to perform
Right.
at that moment, and why would that be? I mean, it said sort of its batteries are depleted, so
Right.
it's
It's based on the operational, you know, the state of charge, you know, a lot of different factors, but basically, you know, an operator needs to optimize its dispatch so that it can be available during these emergencies. So you want to be discharging during emergencies, and you want to be charging during those off-peak periods.
okay. But presumably, there could be moments where you don't know that a PAI is being called. It's because there's literally an emergency.
Right.
Okay.
But you
And
would have a clue.
okay, so they would have an incentive to make sure that they're not penalized, and I guess that's the point of doing the shared risk, is that half would go to, so, but they would have other incentives. What you're saying is they have other incentives to make sure that they're charged and ready to go, because they actually can get bonuses, and they would keep the bonuses. So they wouldn't share the bonuses with the ratepayers.
That's what is proposed in the RFA, excuse me, in the agreement.
Okay, and do you know if OPC is asking that those be shared as well with the ratepayers?
Surprisingly, I don't think that OPC, I know in some of the meetings they expressed concern about the bonuses, but I don't remember their written comments, so they're probably best to have them address it.
Okay, but what you were saying to us is that you believe there's incentive enough for the developers to make sure that they are not penalized, that there's enough in the agreement, in all of the different requirements that they have, that they're not gonna subject themselves to a penalty just because there's value for them in being able to meet the needs for when a PAI is called.
Well, first, they will get penalties up to the point where they exceed their storage duration. So, you know, they have to participate, you know, per the terms of the agreement, up to the point where they just don't have any charge left to be able to discharge to support the emergency. So,
Okay. So they'll feel those penalties. Those penalties are not shared.
yes,
Okay.
up to the storage duration. What we're saying is, once you exceed 40 megawatt hours in that hypothetical
Right.
situation, then you are not penalized anymore because you physically exhausted your device's charge.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Clay.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman, I have a question for you, sir. You started your initial comments, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes ago, where you recognized that the RFA did not account for any kind of shared risk. So given that the developers likely considered that in their proposals, I mean, how do you address that now, given that it seems like you're suggesting that we change the rules of the game after it's already started?
Yes, it is. It is difficult to do that. I recognize that, and it would have been great if the original RFA had included this concept of risk sharing. I guess what I'm saying is that this is an important enough concept in terms of the cost of risk that I think it's worth amending, or I guess amending is the wrong word, but changing the parameters, the operating parameters, such that the standardized agreement now accounts for the risk and the sharing of it. The PAI risk has been described as rare, and that's true. However, PJM has acknowledged that it's short capacity. I think it's about 6,300 megawatts through delivery year 2030-31. And I think that the probability of PAIs is going to be increasing at least between now and then. So I don't think it's going to be as rare as it has been in the last couple of years. And there is a stop loss provision. That's true. I agree with that. And perhaps my description of open-ended risk was inaccurate because of that stop loss. It's 1.5 times expected revenue for whatever period is in question. So the risk is capped, but still it can be enormous in extreme emergency situations.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, let's keep rolling through.
So, Chair, you had said you wanted to stop around 12:15. We are
Something like that.
for lunch.
Yeah.
Okay. This might be a natural breaking point then, because we're about to hit a completely different topic than what we've been discussing.
Okay, it's almost 12, so why don't we take 45 minutes and come back at 12:45.
All right. Thank you. Mark, before you leave, quick question for you.
I was coming back.
What?
I was coming back.
Oh, good. I just need to know.
But you're going to give me 45 minutes to...
No, I just need to know there was a number of footnote conversations that weren't in your guys' comments. Do you want to discuss any or all of those?
I think the only thing that we were prepared to discuss is the central agent concept. Everything else, like if anybody would like me to attempt to
Well, I guess the question is I know the representation that was made was if it wasn't addressed in footnotes, then you're okay with what's in the agreement. So my question is do you agree with that? Or would you consider your footnotes to be disputed items for our purposes when we go through it?
I don't think that anything we have would need to be that way other than the central agent.
Okay.
I don't know if that's in the footnote or if that's bigger than that, but...
That one was actually in your
Okay.
so that's why I wanted
Then we're good.
And I'll just cue it up like that during an opportunity.
Agreed. When you have a hard stop too, right? To the extent that...
John said he wasn't going to be available after one.
Well,
We'll see. Crazy.
we'll see. We'll see. All right, okay.
Is it supposed to be today? Yeah, I was going to ask John that.
Okay, it's 12:46. Let's resume. So, where are we?
We are, well, I believe there's one item from Section 9 that Mr. Borkowski would like to address, and then the next item we'll take up is the overarching issue related to payment and the central administrator issue.
So which item is...
So I think we're going to first stick with Section 9, and Mr. Borkowski is going to speak to that.
All right.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. This should take very little time, but just clean up in 9C.
What page are we on?
I'm not sure of the page.
I'm pulling it up. 13.
13?
12 to 13.
Okay, all right, great.
Yeah, 9.
I'm there. Okay.
Okay, there really were no comments on this particular section, but and we did file this in the agreement, but it was a late addition to the agreement, mostly offered by OPC. So the only part in here that I had an issue after thinking about it more is the last sentence. This is for something that's called a resource performance adjustment, and the projects are responsible for changes due to these resource performance adjustments, and what they are is something that's used to adjust specific energy storage devices capacity accreditation based on its performance relative to its technology class. So, for instance, if the technology class has an ELCC of 50%, but the performance is less than that, then they may adjust the accredited UCAP. The bottom line on the last sentence, I think, needs to get some discussion. RPA's resource performance adjustments that result in a decrease in accredited UCAP by more than 5% in 2 consecutive years will trigger a termination right for the escrow administrator. The first issue that I think has to get discussion is the escrow administrator should not be empowered. The commission needs to trigger termination rights, and I'm surprised nobody commented on that, and I'm surprised that I did not pick it up, when we filed this. So I feel like that's an error.
Yeah, that seems like an error, yeah.
The second question, I just have an open question, is about the appropriateness of the whole thing. If anybody wants to comment on it, otherwise I would just recommend that we change that to the commission.
Do any of the parties want to comment on that point? Doesn't look like it. Oh, Suchman.
Okay, so this raises the issue that I talked about earlier about empowering the commission. We already have authority. So can you change it to may trigger a termination period? I mean, where would it? I mean,
I'm sorry. I do think that that's something that the commission can deliberate with, and maybe OGC.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. So you can just flag that.
Yes, it's been flagged. Mr. Borkowski, really quick, you said appropriateness of the whole thing. Do you mean of this sentence?
Yeah, just I just was surprised that nobody commented at all on it. So,
was it a test?
Well,
yes.
We all failed. Yes, I know.
Extra homework for everybody.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Borkowski. All right, the next item, it's Section 10, and there is a part of Section 10 that also is impacted, or Section 8, or sorry, Part 8, Section E is also impacted by this. There's this debate about an escrow administrator, or not, sorry, not escrow administrator, a central administrator, because part of the way the law was structured, it implies there's a non-bypassable surcharge, but also
Are we on page 17?
we are now on to page, yes,
Okay.
we are actually before page, we are pages 15 through 17.
Okay.
So anyways, I would like to let the parties first discuss this issue of central administrator, the legal issues that have arisen, their various positions on how to address it, and what we can do in the interim, since a number of them have proposed that we need to seek a legislative solution, but then how can we go forward if they're saying we need a legislative solution? And then after we address the central administrator concern, I think it would be appropriate for RISA to explain their edits, which I think have to do with implementing the central agent or central administrator item. And then the last part of section 10 is staff and Exelon have discussions about cost allocation that should probably be addressed.
Okay, so the people who are wanting to weigh in are RISA, PE, who else?
I believe the Exelon utilities, maybe staff.
Okay, well, if staff wants to comment, they can go first. Okay, Anson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Anson Justy on behalf of staff. ANSONJUSTI. On the central agent issue, we're okay with the structure of the proposal. The one thing we wanted to point out through our comments that I can summarize is in the offshore wind precedent, we originally had language in the law that said the cost of the program needed to be collected from electricity suppliers. At some point, and I think Exelon pointed out the specific legislation that passed, that requirement of electricity suppliers recovering the costs changed to electric companies. And we think if we were to see a change like that, that would reduce some of the administrative burden, some of the complexity that might be associated with having a central agent coordinating with all of the suppliers. I don't know if that's something that we can necessarily affect here, but just a note that we thought was of use.
Okay, fair enough. Let's turn then to, Exelon. And then RISA, if there, is RISA here? RISA's here, okay.
Good afternoon. This is David Bloom from BGE again. This is part of my presentation. I'm okay with not pulling it up if whatever is easiest here. This section that we wanted to comment on, staff did a very good job of, I think, summarizing at a very high level our view here. I may want to just add a couple additional points. In the material and in our filing, we do go into some more detail on the sort of putting this issue in the context of Maryland's offshore wind program. We do think ultimately here that if you will, a cleanup of the legislation would greatly help the implementation and the administrative efficiency of the storage, transmission storage program. This would benefit customers from avoiding uncertainty and risks that could be placed on electric suppliers. And further, I think it would also help the escrow administrator administer this program by essentially decreasing the number of other parties that
Entities,
the escrow, the entities that the escrow administrator will have to work with. There is some ambiguity in the legislation in the NGA, and then it by sort of de facto it shows up here in the agreement.
Well, ambiguity should give us wiggle room, right?
Well, yes, I like that. So ultimately what we're recommending is that we perhaps partner with others to make a legislative change to clean this up, so that the electric companies instead of electric suppliers, as that term is typically used in our in the legislation and PUA sections, that way the electric utilities can use a non-bypassable surcharge, which is included here to timely recover the costs of these energy storage credits from our customers and working with the escrow administrator. One other point that I didn't include in here that I think is also worth noting is that if there were to be a situation where on a monthly basis, the energy storage credit would actually be a credit to customers, administering that with having the escrow administrator administer a credit to customers with all the electric suppliers may likely lead to a lot of administrative challenges, as well as concerns that could arise from the commission's view on whether or not it's required that electricity suppliers would have to then transfer that credit to customers. I think, again, cleaning it up to have the electric company be involved directly would enable the timely charge, cost recovery, and if there were ever to be a credit from these credits, from the storage credits.
Okay. Let's hear from Risa, and then if John Burkowski wants to say anything, of course, he's always welcome. The microphone problem, huh?
I don't want to touch it.
Well, if you want to sit up here, I mean...
Answer. There we go. I feel like I'm at my bar mitzvah again.
I was going to say,
right.
Barbara Mikulski used to do that.
So
hers might have been taller, though.
So it's good to see you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Good afternoon. Brian Green with the law firm Green Herlocker here on behalf of the Retail Energy Supply Association. We have become sort of a one-trick pony in this proceeding, and that is that the statute gives the Commission the authority to set the non-bypassable charge on the distribution side of the bill or on the supply side of the bill. And I think it's at this point, a consensus item that it should be on the distribution side of the bill, consistent with how the Offshore Wind Act is stated or has been implemented. I believe, I do agree with Exelon and others that a legislative fix would be helpful because it's not as clear in this legislation as it is in the offshore wind or, for that matter, in the nuclear provisions that we see in the same act. However, what we have stated in both sets of comments that we filed in this PC is that Section 7-1226A1 little 2 provides that the suppliers and the utilities shall be responsible for purchasing storage capacity credits. So the word shall be responsible does not say you have to do it, you just have to be responsible for it. And so if you kind of have an agent in what we've come up with here is the central agent, that the utilities will do it for the suppliers. And so we've proposed that there either be a model agreement between the utility and each supplier to do that, or that it be embedded into the utility supplier coordination tariff so that suppliers know, and it's very transparent as to how the process will work. So I can keep going with some of the other proposed edits, but they're all along those lines, and they're really intended to be modest revisions to what's in the agreement in order to make clear that this will be on the distribution side of the bill and not on the supply side through the central agent concept. So I can come back later, or I can walk through that now.
Well, no, I'll tell you what. Let's have everybody testify who wants to testify, and then I suspect that there will be questions that might touch upon what you're going to be talking about.
Very well.
So thank you. Yes.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Kintasia Scott, K-I-N as in Nancy, T-E-S-H-I-A, S-C-O-T-T, here on behalf of the Potomac Edison Company. Just want to summarize, the comments that we've made at the docket, which largely track with what staff have already summarized here today. Our reading of the statute is that the responsibility lies with the electricity suppliers here, and that's generally why we have this disagreement with the concept of the central agent as proposed at this time. We just don't agree that the law allows the concept to be permissible, just due to the nature of the language. And as other parties have stated here, we also agree, that a legislative fix would make this much easier, but that is the nature of Potomac Edison's disagreement. We also received bench requests a bench request on this matter from the commission. I was hoping to have our response filed already, but the comments that I'm going to say here are largely reflect will exactly reflect what that filing will say. So our proposal, what that would, the practical effect of our position would simply be to remove any reference to the central agent concept. And in our filing, we do have a red line, which is fairly simple. It just removes the language that refers to the central agent, and it just leaves the electricity supplier language there. So that is where we are. Otherwise, generally, we don't have a problem with the concept of the central agent. We just don't believe it's permissible under the law as is.
Okay, let's go to Merrick.
I just wanted to state for the record that we would be supportive of moving the fee collection to the EDCs. I think that's much simpler, reduces risk for our members, the batteries that are bidding into these auctions.
Okay, Mr. Borkowski, do you want to say anything, or?
Yes, thank you, Harvey. The only additional item, without repeating what's already been said, that I would offer is that in the end, we're going to have an RFP. Now, we still have questions about who's responsible for the contract with an escrow administrator, whether it's a special entity with all the utilities or something else. But we will have to have an RFP written for an escrow administrator. And, the escrow administrator, I actually sat down with a large bank to talk about, the escrow administrator, what we were looking for, get sort of ideas. And it was arranged through MAREC, and I won't identify the particular bank, but in the end, when I described it to them, it didn't seem like they were very enthusiastic about what we were doing.
The bank, you mean?
Yes,
Right.
because the banks. Because keep in mind, this is going to be several $100 million in this escrow account potentially, and there are certain things that you require of an escrow administrator regarding contractual protections, collateral, resource requirements should somebody default, things of that nature. And that's what the banks do. All this transactional stuff is what they don't do as much. And the more complicated you make this escrow account administration, the harder it's going to be to get somebody to actually do it. It's one thing that they have to know a bunch of PJM rules, but it's another thing to deal with, suppliers and electric utilities and just the complexity of what we're trying to set up here to be compliant with the law. So I would only add that just the complexity of this and trying to secure an escrow administrator is also an obstacle that we should be considering. And hopefully, and I think we have consensus among the work group, hopefully we can, get a change in the law. But really, we need to start on this soon, and the problem is that, we likely won't know if we have a change in law.
Well, let me ask.
March.
Let me ask a question here. Based on the timelines, if the legislature is inclined to change the law, will this have to be emergency legislation that goes into effect immediately, or can it wait to July 1st of next year, or what are our timelines like here?
Well, July 1st of next year would be 27. We have to have the escrow account up and running by October 1st, 2028.
Oh.
So that gives us a little bit over a year, but
Okay.
but there.
No need for emergency. Okay.
Yeah, it would have been great if we had really come to this consensus before the Relief Act was passed, because we made some other changes.
Mm-hmm.
but unfortunately it didn't rise up in the work group early enough.
Okay. Questions? Suchman. Of anybody who testified, obviously.
Right. Well, let me just focus on Mr. Prokowski. So what do you think we need to do in this, in terms of clarifying responsibilities and identifying responsibilities? Do we need to deal with the question of who's collecting monies in this document?
I think that and the developers, Mayrek can speak for the developers, I think they would like to have some assurances, maybe not to the level of detail that we have here, that, we have an escrow administrator, and actually, I know Mayrek was very anxious that we continue this work stream and define all this stuff, but whether it needs to be in this document to the extent that it is documented, I'll leave that for Mayrek to comment further. But I think the more specificity about these things, it has been desired by the developers all along in this particular agreement.
Okay. I'm often sort of inclined to try to find a way to implement a statute without having to go back and fix it. so if there's a way that we can do this and not require that changes be made to the language of the statute, that would always be my preference. Since there's agreement that this be a non-bypassable charge on the distribution charge, and that is even if it's collected at some point by the supplier, it always goes to the company, correct? Because it's non-bypassable, so it's got to go to the company. I guess is it your understanding that it's permissible under the statute to just give that responsibility to the electric company and not the supplier? Because then you have two different entities that could be collecting it, and it's not clear who's collecting it.
Well,
And
the suppliers have to purchase energy storage capacity credits, but I think that's the purpose of the central agent is basically the utilities would charge the customers, and then there would be a central agent that would coordinate the responsibilities of the charges and how they're allocated between the electric suppliers and the electric companies. That's the way the agreement is written now without a change in law, but it's very complex. I think it can be done.
well, that's what
but
I'm
it's
sort
complex.
of right. Central agent is that identified in the statute?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think
That's
so.
a construct we came up with to try to make this work.
Right, but that just adds another layer of complexity and cost.
Yes.
And I just wonder if there's a way to simplify the language now with an understanding that you're going to probably have to go further into detail just because you're going to be identifying the responsibilities of the escrow administrator and sort of take it up then. Because I think as I read this language, it feels overly complicated and it introduces a new entity into the mix that could end up further complicating an already complicated situation, and then the additional cost of that. So you know what I'm asking. So to give the kind of like very skeletal construct without being specific about what you're requiring, and then take that up when you're doing the more detailed identification of responsibilities for the escrow administrator.
I think that I'm in alignment that would be great to do. I would just defer to maybe Mayrek or or one of the other developers here to say
Oh.
what specificity they would need.
And he's
Well,
right
and
there.
like magic, there's Evan. So
I figured I might be summoned. I'll just try to clarify our position briefly. I think Commissioner Suchman, you correctly identified there's two separate issues here. The first one, that the payments should be collected by the EDCs as opposed to the suppliers from the point of consumer. That sounds like it's a consensus item. From our standpoint, not having every single supplier trying to navigate that, as other folks, Exelon and others have mentioned, seems very clear that would be good to make, hopefully without a legislative change. The issue about the escrow administrator, I think our vision, at least when we were working on this bill in the legislature, was that it would be a very, pretty much just a pass-through entity. Like the escrow administrator just exists to hold the funds that are collected from the consumers by the EDCs, and that the funds would stay there until the developer certifies, what their capacity interactions were, and then they would either pay or, do whatever appropriate transfer of funding was necessary. So I'm not 100% sure how we would want to recommend simplifying the construct that's been laid out, but simple is good from our standpoint. Just the nuance I probably can't speak to on the fly here.
Right, but and I understand this is, you don't want to overcomplicate it because it's going to be a complicated process anyway. I'm just wondering if there's a way to put it off and then deal with it when you're dealing with the escrow administrator issue, because I think those have to be, you have to work on those simultaneously, it seems to me, to get it right. And to Mr. Bukowski's to address the point he raised earlier, it's going to be hard to find an escrow administrator, and then to give them the kind of complexity that is outlined here. I'm worried that we're not going to find somebody.
Well, a bank will do it for a hefty fee.
Yeah,
That's gonna
short
add
of
cost.
a hefty fee. So I'm just sort of asking. I understand that you'd like to see this, and I think it's important that we identify the processes. I'm just wondering if we can move that to the sort of the next step when we start to deal with the escrow administrator responsibilities.
I think that makes sense. My developers can stand up if they disagree, but I think that was what we envisioned, was that separate process would be where this would get figured out.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mostly because it's so important that we get this right, and if we put too much in, it's going to really bog down the process. So, okay, thank you.
What's next? Oh, you have a question? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Borkowski, I just have a quick question for you. Just like on 10A here, and this is kind of a theme that kind of goes through the document. It says there's not going to be a contract between the commission, the project suppliers, and the companies, but all the terms are governed by this agreement. But this agreement is just between the commission and the developer. Am I overthinking this? But it seems like we're binding parties to an agreement that they're not, or entities to an agreement that they're not parties to. Is this how they did offshore wind?
Well, to be frank, I don't know that, I could speak to offshore wind. And I do think, because there are electric company responsibilities, the way we wrote this originally with regards to the non-bypassable charges and things like that, that's why it's written the way it is. Now, if we were to take out that piece, as was suggested by Commissioner Suchman, you may be able to rewrite this, and this is just the agreement between the commission and the project.
I mean, that's how it starts.
Yeah.
It specifically says that, but yet we're binding other parties to it.
I see your point. But if we could simplify it,
Okay.
and we could probably take the electric companies out of it. I think we were trying to do a lot here to really nail down the how things were going to happen with the escrow account.
Okay.
Because that is going to have to be agreed eventually by the commission and the developers. And we, because we have electric company responsibilities included in there, we kind of roped them in that clause that you mentioned.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, just wanted to respond to something in Mr. Burkowski's response there, and generally agree with Evan from Merrick on kind of the skeletal proposal to defer some of the decision making on how exactly the escrow administration will work to a later date. I would just say from a developer standpoint, really the key piece of this is the establishment of the non-bypassable charge. Really, when we're taking this document through our project financing process, we want to be able to point to the funding mechanism behind this revenue stream. So establishing that funding mechanism is important in this order. The exact details we think can be saved for a later date.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions from Commissioner Linton?
So I actually had a question for Commissioner Sushman.
This is unusual.
Yeah, this is unusual, but I
Okay, go crazy.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that what you were asking about, did it cover all of Section 10, or just how far down in Section 10 were you going?
Well, that's interesting. Right, so we start on page 15.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that we hit the you're talking about little 5i.
Well, I was interested in. I had a question about Section H. So I don't know if
Sure. Ask.
my question wasn't for her, for Section
Right,
H.
but to whom do you want to direct that?
I would direct that to Mr. Borkowski.
Can you bring up Section?
Yes, sorry.
That's-
Yeah, no, that should be just really.
I only go through G, so
Oh, yeah, it's a new one.
It's a good faith negotiation, governing law.
Oh, that, okay. Is that yeah, I'm
That's it.
sorry. That's in 11, I was in 10.
No, that's in 10 too. So Mr. Burkowski, I think.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
I
so
got-
there's the escrow account administrator, which is most of
Yeah, sorry.
most of this, but also then you get to the section that in 10 or that discusses a good faith negotiation.
So I just wanted to know if this section was intended to create a mediation type of process between the disputing parties, because it references Maryland law, and Maryland actually has a separate laws related to how mediation is supposed to be resolved between parties. And I didn't know if you were citing that or if we were creating something independent of it.
This was added as proposed by MAREC, so we did not reference Maryland law. This is taken from NYSERD up in New York, their standard agreement, and we put it here because of the fact that it involves escrow administrator disputes, and so that's the genesis of it. I can't answer your question about state of Maryland law specifics.
Okay.
Well, I'm assuming this is just a conflict of laws provision. So they just want to make sure that regardless of where the escrow administrator is, that the Maryland laws apply. And
That's what I thought it was supposed to be.
yeah, I mean,
But
I think that's,
but
but you're concerned about whether it's actually providing too much.
well, that's part of it, because we have, Maryland has mediation rules already, and if that's what we're attempting to incorporate here, that's fine. I just didn't know.
Well, it does say that the agreement in this particular clause shall be governed by and construed in accordance with the laws of the state of Maryland with regard to conflict of laws principles. So, to me, that was the intent.
Okay.
I just don't have specifics beyond that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And Mr. Borkowski, if we're going to keep this, we should define who the parties are, because this provision anticipates or seems to imply that there's only two parties. at either party's request, so that's either us or the developer.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's not the intent.
Well, the intent here was the layout responsibilities, transactional responsibilities associated with the escrow administrator. And at this point, the escrow administrator, to my earlier point, we haven't determined, how that would even be structured, because the NGEA says it's selected by the electric companies, which implies that, maybe it's in a special entity run by the electric companies. But, there is also the question of, what role should the state have in it if it's being run by the electric company. So the law wasn't very clear on that.
Well, we might have to make a list for our friends in Annapolis.
So, Mr. Chair, I have just one.
Go ahead.
Okay, so, Mr. Borkowski, who are, actually just looked to see if parties are defined, and it's not a defined term. Who are the parties to this agreement, or who will they be?
Well, the parties to the agreement, if we take out the transactional items related to the escrow administrator, it's intended to be between the commission and the project. The only part that we got into the electric companies was this section about the commercial obligation
Okay.
between the electric companies, the commission, and the suppliers. And, if we can successfully take that out, maybe we just, to satisfy MAREC, I think Chalk Point brought it up, Colin, maybe we just, for this whole thing, just repeat what's said in the statute.
I think that's right. I think that, if they're, you start to add folks that are not signatories to the agreement,
Yeah.
and it's not enforceable against them, and they're not agreeing to anything, so it just becomes not helpful language, so,
But they are supervised by the commission.
oh, there we go. Right, thank you.
So, But, yeah, we can work on it.
Okay.
All right, before we go to the next item in this section, I want to give Reza an opportunity to, if they want, so in section 8, they had a proposed edit, and I think in this section they had proposed edits, but if those were all to address the comments that have already been made, I don't think we need to go through them, but if there's anything they wanted to add to that.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say they're all in our July 1st comments as to what the edits would be. They're consistent with the arguments that I've made and what you've heard here, as just shoring up the concept that it's on the distribution side of the bill. And if there's going to be a central agent, let's be consistent in the language that we use. And if there's not, let's also be consistent. So that's what we were trying to accomplish with the edits, but we don't need to go through them today.
Okay, thank you. What's
right.
next?
So then, in the same section 10, this came up a little in staff's comments, and this is the one area where I'm going to bring in the footnotes a little. There is some debates about cost allocation that I don't know, especially if most of 10 comes out, we need to address, but I figured we can let them, Exelon and staff, speak to it very quickly, so if we want to provide any guidance on this, we can.
Okay, let's start with staff.
Good afternoon again. So our understanding of the MJEU proposal is to have these ESCC program costs, allocate them based on the PJM PLC, so by demand at the class level, and then Exelon's, our understanding of their proposal is to then allocate to individual customers those costs based on their demand. We're amenable to that for the customers who are already paying a demand charge. They understand the demand charge. We would prefer for customers who are not paying a demand charge already, so we're mostly thinking of the residential class on this one, just having that demand-based class-level allocation show up on the bills through a $1 per kilowatt hour sales charge.
Separately?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks again, David Bloom with Baltimore Gas and Electric. Yeah, this is definitely an implementation detail that I do think will eventually need to get spelled out here. Just maybe a point of clarification, and I had seen staff's comments here. What we were proposing, and if you will allow me to sort of follow the logic, is that these capacity resources, the storage resources, will ultimately be compensated by PJM based on $1 per megawatt day. That's the basis how they're going to get their monthly invoice from PJM. And then what we were thinking through here is that the cost allocation, similar to PJM's current capacity cost allocation methodology, which we refer to as it's the capacity peak load contribution. Typically, I know at least for the Exelon utilities, we do assign all customers individual capacity PLC values, and so we could then use that as the basis for each customer to have their share of the cost or subsequent benefit from these storage credits, how to recover the costs for those storage credits. So I understand what staff was describing about where there's demand charges. What we had mentioned in the working group is that it wouldn't be on a customer demand basis. It's their capacity PLC. It's the capacity ticket.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so what we want to do is we want to make sure that the allocation is fair to all customers. So to pay for NERC, it's based on billing determinants, and it's a non-bypassable charge. How is that realized at the company level?
So, if by NERC, I don't know specifically how NERC charges are recovered. Now, when you say NERC,
I'm talking about the reliability charges, that they're charged to all end users based on billing determinants, and it's a non-bypassable charge. Can you take a look at that and see how that's done? Because it is supposed to be non-bypassable, and if they're not paying a demand charge, they're somehow allocated that. And if you could, because it may not be that different from this in the sense that everybody has to pay. And in your system, everybody's going to get the value of storage.
yes, and I think
For a variety of different reasons. So it's not that dissimilar. If you can take a look at that and then get back to us on how you do that.
okay, I will take that. And
I didn't think you'd know it there,
Yeah.
but it just occurred to me that this may not be that different from that. So if you could take a look.
Right, and just to be clear, like I'm suggesting that how customers pay for capacity, for PJM capacity costs, I'm trying to marry that process up here as well. That was the intent of when I brought this topic up in the working group.
Right, but I'm concerned about making sure that everybody, all your customers pay and pay in a way that's fair.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so that's why I want you to look at how you do NERC.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none? Okay, let's move on.
Thank you. All right, so that finishes section 10. This leads us to section 11, the miscellaneous provisions. The Maryland Energy Administration had a number of items that they had highlighted as concerns, but did not provide language. A bench data request was issued to them to come with language or to file language, but I will let them address that. Before we go to MEA, there was also a number of footnote items in this section, but per what we discussed earlier, I believe we're going to, unless we were going to, Potomac Edison and Merrick had raised footnote issues, but they didn't come up in their written comments to us, so I was going to give them an opportunity to just confirm that they don't think we need to address any of them. And then if they don't, then go to MEA.
I see at least one shaking head in the back of the room, so.
All right, so then I think.
Okay, MEA then.
So MEA.
And if you can identify yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Haley Kotzker with the Maryland Energy Administration, HALEY KOTZKER. So starting with section 11B, looking at line 4, related to early termination payment following event of default. MEA recommends adding a narrow limitation that confirms any early termination payment remains subject to applicable law and commission authority. So our written comments are going to be filed today with that exact language, but some suggestions that we've proposed include adding language that says any such early termination payment shall remain subject to applicable law and commission authority. Otherwise, we don't recommend changing the provision. The existing language already provides for the good faith negotiation of the termination payment and third party arbitration if parties cannot resolve the amount. So that's all we have for section 11B.
Just really quick,
4.
did I go to the right clause, or was it further down?
It was 11B3.
Okay, wrong one. Right to cure.
In the
4.
Oh, I'm sorry.
4, sorry.
Here we are. Sorry. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, we're okay. Okay. Anybody else?
I think there's one more provision MEA had a concern with.
Okay, go ahead.
11G1, change in law. MEA recommends adding language to clarify that any adjustment resulting from a change in law remains subject to applicable law.
What page are we on? Okay. Okay, go ahead. Oh, I see it. Okay.
So MEA recommends adding language that any adjustment resulting from a change in law remains subject to applicable law and commission authority, and does not guarantee project revenues or economic value. So some of the proposed language that we have that will be posted soon in our written comments is that any adjustment under this subsection shall remain subject to applicable law and commission authority, and shall not be construed to create a guarantee of the project's expected revenues or economic value. And then one more in section 11G3. MEA recommends adding language to clarify that an early termination payment remains subject to applicable law as well. So proposed language for 11G2 would add any such early termination payment shall remain subject to applicable law and commission authority, and shall not be construed to include a guarantee of future ESCC payments or project revenues. MEA's concern is that the existing provision could create a broad and uncapped termination obligation following future commission action or changes in Maryland law.
Okay, any questions from anyone?
Real quick.
Go ahead, McLean.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Did MEA raise these concerns during the work group, or is this the first everyone's hearing about them?
So the written comments they were in our written comments, but they were not brought up during the work group.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, I think there are no other questions.
All right, do the commissioners have any other questions on this section? Otherwise, I think I have non-agreement related items that were brought up in comments.
Not me. No.
Okay. All right. So, and then I guess to just clarify with MEA one more, there was an item they had brought up regarding PJM market constructs, and that less prescriptive language should be used. Just confirming that you'll address that question in your written comments today, or.
Yes, it's addressed in our written comments, but I also believe that we've covered it today.
Okay. Thank you. And then RISA also had raised an issue that they wanted stakeholders to prepare a template agreement for each third-party supplier to execute or allow a utility to be a central agent. I don't know if Mr. Green wants to provide any more feedback on that item, or just let his written comments speak for themselves.
I think the concept was that we wanted to ensure that the central agent or the utility arrangement, whichever the case may ultimately be, was consistent with the statute. And like I said before, the statute allows for retail suppliers to be responsible for purchasing the credits. It doesn't say they have to purchase the credits. So we can enter into a contract with a utility or a central agent to make that happen. So whether that's an actual contract or whether it's in the supplier coordination tariff, we'd be fine with either, but we wanted to present that as a process point going forward.
Okay. Right.
All right.
What
I
else?
think that's my list. I don't know if Mr. Borkowski or any of the parties have additional items that we need to address.
Okay. Anybody else care to comment? All righty then. Well, then we're done with this public conference. So I will adjourn us, and we are going to go on to our rulemaking. So how much time do you need to set up for that?
Technically noticed for 2. So
What's that?
I said it was technically noticed for 2, so we can maybe wait until then and wait 10 minutes.
I mean, if we publish notice for 2, then let's do 2. So, okay. See you back, those of you who want to be back at 2 o'clock.